Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have Gavriella with us today. We've known each other through Microsoft. She's extremely active in the Microsoft alumni network. So over to you, Gavriella. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Well, thanks for having me, Bobby. I have, as you said, I worked in the IT industry for more than 30 years. I worked at Microsoft for almost 26. I left 5 years ago in 2021. I was a corporate vice president when I left and have since taken on several technology board director roles. And then my passion is around allyship. And so I spend quite a bit of time helping individuals to break through and understand what it means to work with intention to be an ally.
Fantastic. And let me just honor you firstly, Gavriella, in a STEM industry, right? That's so packed with men. I'm just honored and just humbled by the work you've done while you're at Microsoft and how you continue to lead and show the way with the allies framework that we'll talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's get into the first question, which is how do you define respect in the workplace?
So, respect for me is really listening to another individual, trying to understand their perspective, trying to learn from them. Understand it comes with a basic understanding that we all have value, we all have something to contribute, and we all will come at everything from very different perspective because we come at it from our own lived experiences, which are naturally going to be different. And so respect is really taking the time to understand where somebody is coming from and then looking for where they are contributing, what their value is, to bring it back into the whole of whatever it is you're trying to do. And just understanding that we are all on equal footing and nobody is better than anyone else, and that there is something like anything we would do together would be better when we bring our collective minds to it.
Love it. Let's go a little deeper on that part about taking the time. So we know the push is, especially, in the tech industry, everything's so fast and just moving at warp speed. By the way, the letter in respect, the S is spaciousness, that really reminding people to take the time to slow down. It's not a quick 30-minute call. It may be a walk in the park or a meal. So please share with us, how have you been able to, while you're in that CVP role at Microsoft and otherwise, what are some things that have worked for you to help people to reflect on, gee, it actually pays to slow down, to go fast?
Well, so one of the things is that, when you are in your busy day and you have back to back to back meetings and you're switching context constantly, it's really important to take the few minutes between those to quiet your mind, to let go of whatever the last thing was that you were doing so that you can be fully present in the next thing that you are going to do. Probably the biggest mistakes of non-inclusion, disrespect, whatnot, is when your mind is still on something else or you're all amped up about something else and you are not present and listening to what's going on. And so for me, that looked like, taking a few minutes between and just rewriting myself, recentering myself. And in a group, when you're leading or facilitating the group, to just give everyone a few minutes in the beginning, whether it's through, kind of active questions that you might ask them, or just giving people time for the chatter that might happen beforehand, so that they can then be fully present. And then to remind people, today's topic is, and this is the focus, and I would like it if you could all be fully present as we get to blah, blah, and this is the end goal of whatever we're trying to do, right? So that you really put the cues in to help everybody be fully present. And then there are many things that you can do throughout a conversation to make sure that you remain present right? In terms of, there's a lot of talk about active listening, like repeating what someone says or whatever. And a lot of that is targeted at you letting them know you heard them, putting judgment on it or jumping to a conclusion or assuming I understand what they're saying. Even when I completely agree with them, right? I need to make sure I'm processing what they're saying and not mishearing that. And so those are some of the things to do to make sure that you really help somebody feel heard. And when they feel heard, they feel respected.
I love it. As I'm taking all that in, I'm thinking, gosh, these are simple things, but they're not easy to practice. So I think the foundation of what you're saying is really self-respect. It's especially that first point you made around having that block of time between things, so you're not going back to back and can shift, give yourself a moment to shift context is so valuable. And I think most of us don't give ourselves permission to give ourselves that time and just use the excuse of got too much to do. So thank you.
I'm too busy. I don't have time for this, whatever. And like if somebody comes to you like out of the blue, right? Catches you in the hallway or whatnot and asks for something or wants you to hear something out. The most respectful thing I found to do is to say, I would love to understand more of what you're saying. Let's find some time where I can really focus on what you're asking me.
Absolutely. And I'm taken also to personal. I'm very much a type A personality. My wife likes to be heard, and there are times when I can't be in that space. And so I've learned to say exactly that. It's like, honey, I really want to hear you, but let's come back to that. Can we kind of give that till dinner time or something? Yeah.
Right.
Lovely. All right, let's shift, Gavriella, to when it's not present, when respect is not present, not just in a team or that you feel it, but really you can feel it in the ecosystem, in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's really toxic. It's really destructive. When respect is missing, then you squelch ideas and you get people doing just what they're told, or there's a lack of empowerment. And so, I've been in those places where, there's just one person that may be dominant, one dominant personality, and everyone just goes, all right. And then they don't feel like they're really contributing. They don't feel value. And when it goes on for a long time, people just drop off. They drop out and they disengage.
And those telltale signs are silence, our lack of engagement, are probably on the drama triangle victimhood, right? Of a lot of side talk
Yep.
about, yeah, not being heard. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. So let's see. Yeah, we're pretty much let's do this. Let's get to your top tips. And then I'd love you to share more about the allies framework. So yeah, what would be your top tips, Gavriella, for people to apply in their day-to-day work and relationships?
Well, I mean, so my top tips are, practice with intention. So, when you're going into a conversation, have an intention, right? And really think about how do you want to show up? And then practice listening. It is one of the hardest things. It doesn't sound hard, but it is one of the hardest things to quiet your mind, to listen without judgment, to listen without trying to think of what you'd want to say next, or what your answer is to the question or whatnot, right? But just to listen and to be curious, and then to want to know, the intention being that you want to get more out of this relationship. You want to get more out of this conversation. And that, if you go in with that intention, then you will practice allyship and you will practice respect and you will get a more inclusive environment where people feel empowered. People will feel empowered when they feel listened to, when they feel like they are contributing, when they feel like their ideas are valued, right? And that even when you disagree or you're coming at something from a different point of view, when you both practice that, you find that you have more common ground than you have uncommon ground around it. And you may find that somebody, like I will say earlier in my career, if I was trying to lead a meeting and we were trying to get to an outcome, and somebody would say something that to me felt like it was out of the blue or completely orthogonal,
Mhm.
off topic, right? My goal was shut that down. Let's keep moving, right? I subsequently learned that those things can sometimes be the best ideas because somebody came to that, their mind went like 3 steps away from what you were talking about, but it went there for a reason. And if you can understand what connected them to from the topic you're on to where they went and how they believe that will contribute to help move it forward, it can be groundbreaking. And so it's learning and understanding that when you take the time, that little bit of time, a few more minutes on something, it can really help you break through and be the thing that you were looking for. And so that's the thing about the value of everybody and the contribution and recognizing that. So practicing that. So in my work on allyship, it's about giving people very, very practical steps that they can take to learn and practice how to do this, to give them the language that they might need to be able to do this, right? To learn how to listen, to lift people up, and as opposed to constantly going to tearing down someone's idea, how to build it up and how to build up the room and how to build up the group. It brings people in, which brings forth more authenticity and brings forth more innovation. And that helps you, right? And then how do you then, elevate those voices? How do you amplify those voices? How do you help people see their own value and really help them come into their own to become those empowered individuals? And at which time you get really great engagement.
I love it all. I love it all to just play back, that starting point around the tip around intention. I'll tell you, it's the biggest thing that shows up as I deal with executives is one, blindness about actually articulating that intention, and then even more blindness around impact. So all these tips you're suggesting, and I believe with the Allies framework, are really about how to have that alignment. And then the piece about, when you get that thing that may on the surface for all of us look like a disconnect, to actually pause, because that my or your putting that energy into a meeting is more disruptive actually than the person who jumped in, right? And so just simply get curious, create that safety and space for the person to speak that, and then see where it goes, right? So the lens, I think, becomes very different, and it's actually quite efficient to do it that way rather than putting it in the bucket of let's, put it in a parking lot or something, right? Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Because what happens when you shut somebody down, then that becomes very disruptive, right? Then it becomes like the thing everybody's focused on. And there becomes like a whole set of back chatter that happens around that. And then you're way off track from what you were trying to do, right? So, yeah. And the other thing I learned when I became an executive was that, you struggle for years and years and years, or at least I did, struggle for years and years to be heard, right? To have people listen to what you have to say and value what you have to say. And then you become an executive. And suddenly, what I realized was anytime I said anything, like it became like gospel and everybody started doing stuff. Even though if I was just like, I was thinking out loud, I was brainstorming, like suddenly, oh, my ideas were the best ideas. And we were all just going to snap to it. And I said we should go do it. Right. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. And so like I had to really backtrack and start working in a whole different way than I had trained myself in all those other years to get to where I was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just looking at my phone because you're reminding me of our dear friend Sabina Nawaz and her book, You're the Boss. She says exactly that. In fact, I'm going to have her as a guest on the show. That switch to go from, now being in the spotlight, being that executive and recognizing that impact that has on people. And because it's also the authenticity is you can sense, I can at least sense when an executive is doing that filter versus being authentic and real and recognizing their power differential and navigating it with all of these skills of truly listening and inviting people in so they don't hold back because of that. Lovely. So before we close, Gavriella, I am going to include a link to your website and lovely videos on how to understand the framework, but please give a recap of each of the letters in #allies for everyone.
Yeah. So, so coming from Microsoft, right, we like acronyms. So to make it very simple, I take the word allies and I say there are 6 actions that allies take. They advocate, they listen, they lift, they include, they elevate, and they sponsor. And the first 3 are very reactive, meaning that anyone can do them at any time for anyone else in any conversation. The last 3 are proactive, meaning that you really need to be in partnership with the person that you want to elevate or create more visibility for, because it can have the opposite effect of your intention if you're not in sync about what it is that they want.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for your dedication to this work. I'm a big champion and hope folks go look it up and learn from you. So thank you so much for being a guest, Gabriella.
Thank you so much, Bobby.